Hey guys, Johnny Mac's Garage out here, and today's project is actually the old K10 Chevy truck. So my family bought this new in '86. The last time we worked on it, we threw a Blueprint Engines front drive on it here. So it uses a unique dual serpentine setup, and we were able to get some of the 1986 crossover year nonsense out of here that didn't seem to make much sense. So finally eliminated a squeaky power steering pump. Thing works great. Put a little bigger cooling fan on it. A nice little three-stroker with aluminum heads on it, similar to a BP 38313. If you're looking for a nice 400 horse roller cam small block Chevy. But this truck used to be super clean, and unfortunately over the last round of winters here, it's really started to show its age. And what I constantly hear is that aftermarket sheet metal doesn't fit real well. But I can't see, taking stuff with this, leading edge rust on it and trying to do body work on this thing, and then it looks like garbage again in the next 4 or 5 years. So what we've got is a bed full of some new sheet metal here, and we're going to see how good or bad these aftermarket panels actually fit. We've got a couple of inner fenders. There's one in the garage already. We've got a couple of outer fenders. So we're going to get the front end torn down off of this thing. Got a fuel door. Gotta love these old square bodies that they have the perfect combination of Torx and Phillips garbage, and so we're gonna have a lot of fun tearing this down and switching ratchets 75 times. But anyway, tear the fenders off of this thing, see how the new ones fit, and kind of get into how this sheet metal actually is. You can see this side's a little more beat up than the other one. The story here is I worked at a drag strip growing up, and we parked this thing on the hill, and the track blower came by and just completely peppercorned it. And unfortunately, that's the aftermath. So the bed sides are maybe savable. I haven't really made that determination yet, but the doors and the fenders and cab corners are pretty much gone. So anyway, we'll check back in and see how she looks here after a bit. Alright, so it's a little windy outside, so bear with me here, but I guess kind of some tips and tricks. If your truck has seen an Ohio winter, it's going to look like this, to where there's almost nothing left. This inner fender bucket is ready to drop out of here without even unbolting the outer. The washer bottle comes out with just a simple plug, and then the hose is in here somewhere, just pushes back on, so that's not too bad. We're not going to put a jack back in here, but that's what that bracket was for. And, I mean, you can see this thing's already loose. There's nothing holding it. There was a couple of bolts holding it in, a couple up in the fender here that busted off. And, man, just not much left of anything original bodywork-wise on this. Just, again, glancing it over. This was painted once back in the day, and I think it rusted worse after the alleged paint shop painted it than it did when it was original. I think I've got maybe a bedside, maybe two that can be saved. Doors are definitely going to go. Fenders are gone. We're looking at a hood, a roof, cab shell, maybe tailgate. So back in here, this little wiring harness, if you're gentle with these things, they do pop right out of the fender holes. It's, up into, where was this one here, right? So if you kind of wiggle on them and push on them with a screwdriver, they will come out, so that's not awful there. Shouldn't demolish anything too bad, but yeah, we'll get this the rest of the way off of here. Most of these bolts holding the outer to the inner and the core support and everything have come out fairly easy. So we'll get the outer pulled off and the inner out, kind of compare it to our aftermarket ones and see how close they look, see if the holes are there for the harness and everything, and see how she turns out. Alright, so as you can see, I'm probably a half hour into this project, and I have the inners and outers off of the truck. It wasn't awful by any means. I had to cut one bolt head. I think it was this guy that busted a body nut loose, and this came off just with part of the inner fender, so I had to put a wrench on that and get it off, but not awful. Looking at our aftermarket versus our new one, we've got holes in the right spots for the most part. If you wanted to put the jack assembly back on, you're missing that structure and those two holes. It's probably just a different thing from year to year. Yeah, there's nothing there. So you are missing that. Couldn't tell you what this is supposed to look like because it's not there on that fender. But we'll see how it goes back on. Alright, so here we are. Inner fenders torn off of both sides. I threw some black primer on this side. I'm going to hit the frame with some kill rust, thick paint, and same thing. This side's not quite as beat up as the other side. Still at least fastened together, but you can see the inner's pretty much gone. The outer's not much better, so that's where we're at right now. So not too bad for one day's work. Calling it quits at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm going to let paint dry on kill rust that I laid down. So over here we've got a whole bunch of rusty K10 square body Chevy. Here's where we kind of called it quits, was through some kill rust on some of the frame components and the steering stuff that I could reach. You know, not the prettiest job, but also not the prettiest truck, so not too worried about that. And I've got the fender well buckets up here drying in front of the race car. And I actually used a roller on those, and I had scuffed them up before, but that EDP primer makes a real nice surface. Rust-Oleum laid down pretty well with a roller. For an inner fender, it's fine. I'm not building a show truck by any means. This, you know, just the driver. And she looks a little bare with no fenders, no inners on there, but not too shabby for day one. So I had mocked up the inners and threw an outer on there before doing any painting, just to make sure I wasn't wasting my time with these things. And they don't seem too bad, truthfully. So we'll figure out tomorrow whether they mount up. And I had left the hood on purposely so I can just throw the hinges back on. And at that point, we use that to line it up with the original doors before we rip the doors off and get rid of them. So have enough original body points to make sure that we're getting everything lined up. So anyway, Project K10 here, getting some love instead of the race cars for a change. So day 2 out here after the paint has dried, and I already have both inners back in, the new inners. They honestly look pretty good with just a coat of roller kill rust on them. We'll probably touch them up when it comes time to do actual paint and body, but looking pretty good. They just have 3 mounting points in the front and then 2 in the back, and luckily for me, none of those were rotted off the truck, so they're all back in. I might have 10 minutes on both sides. Probably took longer for me to walk back and forth to figure out which bucket went on which side than it did for me to put them on. So other than having to take the old pre-runner and drag the truck backwards because the battery's not in it, it's been pretty easy morning so far. Hopefully the outers go on as easy as these did. So final cut here, we got everything installed, all back together. Just make a couple of notes here of what I encountered. So this isn't really a how-to video, I guess, but just a tip. I had originally installed the inner buckets, and I figured that it'd be easier to get the fenders back over them. That did not end up working out. I had to pull the inner fenders back out, and I actually bolted them together. They bolt together all up in here with fender clips. I suggest before you do this, you order new, actual, correct GM fender clips for this, because I ended up running into AutoZone or O'Reilly's to get some generic ones, and I made them work, but they aren't perfect by any means. So anyway, bolt the inner to the outer, and with the buddy, you can kind of fish them in from the top down as one big unit, and that worked the best for me. So again, as far as body gaps go and everything, I mean, this is a 30-year-old truck. They really weren't that great from the factory. That's about how it was before. Door gap is not awful. I could probably shim the door back a tad. Again, I'm not a body guy, and I'm not going for, perfect correctness here. This could be pulled out a tad, and it would line up a little better. Panels, this one came fairly straight, a little straighter than the other one. I did have to kiss the back of the marker light plastic for it to sit flush in here with an angle grinder and just knock a little bit of material off of it. I got it to line up pretty well with the core support. One thing I will caution though, the fenders aren't bad, but they are for sure thinner than OEM. Just lining this one up here, you can see there's visibly a handprint right here that it actually dented it. And I mean, we can block this out, it's not a huge deal. And this one doesn't fit quite as pretty as the other one. Got a little bit of an overhang here. It dips in some, so I might take this loose later and try to, bring this out some. But, for a fender with zero rust on it that I think I paid all the $90 for, I can't see taking a used one that has surface rust all over it and hoping that you can etch it and get it back to never rust again. That's kind of what happened to this truck back when it was painted years and years ago. Was, somebody did a quick and dirty scuff and shoot on the cab, and everything that had just a little bit of rust, I think, actually rusted worse. So, and you can see not terrible as far as hood gap goes. Out of the box, this one did have one little ding right here, but I mean, I might pull 10 of them out of a box and they all have something worse than that. And then I don't know if you can see down the side, there's a finger mark or something right here where you can tell I leaned on it a little too hard and popped in. So I don't think the original would have done that. I think they are a little thinner, but not too shabby. And I gotta say, I was gonna paint this truck the exact same color, but if you kind of take the hood out of it and get down, the black kind of looks good. So anyway, thanks for watching Johnny Mac's Garage. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea of what you get into with aftermarket sheet metal and whether it's a good option for you or not.